Good morning, everyone. How's Vegas going on? Welcome to this year's edition of Recon Village. Now, last year's Recon Village was a roller coaster ride, and this time we've hoped to level up. We've got a lot of new things in picture. This time we have some fun stuff such as podcasts, interactive AMA sessions, playing around with GeoSint, Toolmaker, and since this is a Recon Village, we have a live Recon CTF going on as well. We also have some interesting talks lined up throughout the day from some amazing speakers, Bryan being one of them. So I'm very curious to know about the exploits these speakers have come across. And yep, looking for another exciting run of Recon Village. So the very first speaker that we have is Bryan. Bryan is a founder of Bike Index, who will be speaking about Bastardo Grande, hunting the largest black market bike fence in the world. Now, what Bryan noticed is that since 2020, Bryan kept chasing and hunting the single largest black market bike fence in modern history. Now, this OSINT-heavy cross-border investigation eventually blossomed into a federal court case in 2024. Now, in December 21, Bryan published an article that disclosed how OSINT detective work showed resident burglars in Colorado who were exporting stolen bikes into Mexico and then making profit out of this. And yes, Bryan just got it out. That's amazing.
And no one's killed me yet. Yay!
Now, this article did not disclose that there's something that this article did not disclose is that there was something even more dangerous. There was one impressive criminal actor in the same space doing some mischievous stuff. So in this talk, Bryan will talk about how the motivation to seek justice drives normal people to do extraordinary things with OSINT and other methods to chase down bad guys. So let's give it up for Bryan.
Thank you for the introduction. Welcome to DEFCON, everybody. I'm Bryan Hance. Welcome to Bastardo Grande. You picked a great talk to open with. So real quick, who am I? Why am I here? I'm an IT guy. I work in maritime cybersecurity, but that's not why I'm here. I'm also a cyclist, and I co-founded this service called bikeindex.org. I'm pretty good at OSINT. It's pretty great. It's something that I learned kind of late in life. I'm very bad at PowerPoint. I've always known that, so I'm warning you now. And my shtick is sort of applying cybersecurity techniques to other crimes that aren't necessarily cybersecurity, but have sort of a cybersecurity bent. I'm not here to pitch Bike Index, but just so you understand where I'm coming from, we're a nonprofit. We do free bike registration and search, and we have recovered over $26 million worth of stolen bikes. It's like 6 dudes at a website. That's it. And we've recovered $26 million worth of bikes. We have tons of partners. We have point-of-sale integrations. Like when you buy a bike, your bike goes into our system. So point being, I have a lot of data about bikes, bike ownership, and bike theft, and I get a lot of bad guy like crime intelligence. So some of you might not be into bikes, and some people don't really understand. Like, there's 4 things you should know in 2024. There's tons of more bikes on the road. And that could be a whole talk on its own, but the reasons are COVID, the popularity of e-bikes, and like cities really getting into embracing cycling. You see like cities that have those greenways. That's one of the reasons there's so many bikes out there. 2 is, damn, bikes are way more expensive these days. That's a $12,000 specialized e-bike you're looking at the top. You see these cargo bikes around as well. Those are in like the $5,000 to $7,000 to $8,000 ranges, so they're really expensive. 3, thieves in 2024 are way more organized. That could also be a crazy talk. They have spotters, they have commanders, they have command and control, they have hyper-granulized roles, they have a hierarchy. It's not just dudes running around with bolt cutters anymore. They have methodologies, and they are very good at what they do. I liaised with one informant for a while who's like, no, this is the price list they gave us. If you're standing in a house and you're looking at bike A and bike B, you want these brands, not these brands. So they've been given targets. And 4, there are so many places to sell stuff that you've stolen anonymously in 2024. You've got platforms like Facebook and Craigslist, of course. You've got the whole constellation of what I call shitty local sales apps like OfferUp and Mercari. Some of these platforms, unfortunately, get openly hostile if you start chasing bikes on them, which we have found out. But the thing that I would tell you here, this is the most fertile OSINT hunting ground you will ever find. These sites and these platforms are an amazing cornucopia of OSINT. It's a great place to practice and learn your skills. So those of you that might not know what OSINT is, that might be only a small percentage in the room, it's generally thought to be the act of gathering and analyzing publicly available data for intelligence purposes. If nobody here has ever read Michael Bazzell, the dude literally wrote the book on open source intelligence. He runs an amazing website called Intel Techniques. I definitely recommend check it out if you've never checked out Michael Bazzell's books. In 2023, though, I was watching a kung fu movie, and they had a way better definition of what I consider OSINT. And that is, it's dangerous people with weird skills. You watch somebody who's really good in OSINT, it's like watching a wizard at work. The fact that there are people out there that they can look at a photograph and they can, from the color of the guy's hair to the type of tree behind them to the way the shadow falls, 5 minutes later they can tell you his password. Like, that's fucking magic, right? That's completely insane. So having set that stage, in June of 2020, I got an email, as I often do, about stolen bikes. And he says, hey, my name is Redacted. I'm a cyclist from Mexico. I'm sorry to inform you that your bike is in Mexico, and it's that bike that was pictured there. This bike is being sold at Redacted, because I haven't named this guy yet. You will find your bike with these particular characteristics, and this mofo only sells stolen bikes, and all are from your area. And without further ado, this is that mofo. This is the first thing that I saw the minute I opened up that email. This is a Facebook business page called Constru Bikes that is based in La Barca, Jalisco. And for those of you that might not know, La Barca, Jalisco is like central Mexico. It's like 2,200 miles away from the San Francisco Bay Area. So we were looking at a bike that was stolen in the San Francisco Bay Area that popped up in La Barca, Jalisco, 2,200 miles away. Pretty weird, right? I see a lot of weird edge cases. This was like the edgiest of edge cases. And we started digging into this guy. I will now refer to him as Bastardo Grande, which for those of you that don't speak Spanish, it means enormous bastard. He has a very large Facebook footprint. He's got 36,000 followers. He's been active since 2015. He's got a region-locked Facebook page. This was new to me. I'd never seen this before. Facebook actually lets you lock your pages and say, I only want viewers from certain countries to be able to see these pages, which is super confusing to us because I couldn't access this page initially until we got a VPN set up for Mexico. He is a prolific poster. He is very good at advertising. He does about 1 to 15 posts per day. Every single one of those posts contains just ridiculous amounts of high quality images of each one of these bikes, which for me as an OSINT investigator is exactly what I want to see. He is affiliated with and runs other Facebook groups related to cycling in Mexico. So not only does he have this sales page, he runs one that's like it translates as sort of high-end road cycling. There's mountain, he has all these sort of niche areas that he's involved with. Dude has an online footprint a mile wide. Probably the lowest hanging OSINT target in the universe. So those of you with some chops may be noticing the information on the left already and saying, I see some things there that may be interesting. So the first thing we started doing was sort of picking apart the business and picking apart the man. So let me introduce you to Ricardo Estrada Zamora, a literal OSINT pinata of a man. Maybe in the first 5 minutes we were looking at this guy, we had his name and address, we had his email, we had his date of birth, we had his phone number, we had his license plates, and in a stunning turn of events, we had the guy's name of his bank, his account, and routing numbers. Because every time someone would message him and say, how do I pay you, he would put this thing up. So here's all my banking information. We're first 5 to 10 minutes here, right? So OSINT pinata is probably a very apt description. We also found a very wide footprint of bikes cross-listed across other sales sites. This is a site called Mercado Libre, which is kind of like a Mexican Craigslist. So we were seeing bikes that were advertised on the Facebook pages, doing reverse image searches, and finding those bikes listed elsewhere. Because at this point, we're just trying to get the 10,000-foot view on this guy. We're just trying to paint the picture. We also found his Instagram, which is completely nutballs. He had his Facebook page feeding his Instagram as one does. And the great thing about that, as an OSINT investigator, what he was doing is he was selling bikes on Facebook. as those bikes sold, he would remove them from Facebook, but those images persisted on Instagram. So, we were looking at Facebook and we were sort of seeing like, oh, we sort of see how he operates. We're only seeing a partial picture. Where could we possibly get an entire archive of his bikes? Right? Huge win. So scraping Instagram turned out to be incredibly good for us. And if you're considering like each one of those bikes is probably in the $3,000 to $7,000 range. And so when we opened up Instagram and saw that, our heads basically exploded. So what we're seeing is sort of an overview of a fairly mature organization, right? This is unlike anything we'd ever seen before. We see a lot of little local guys who do thefts, and we see a lot of guys in America who maybe steal in Seattle and sell in Portland and vice versa. This guy is a transnational operation. He's media savvy, he has marketing, he does advertising, he co-signs other bikes that we identified stolen from other sellers and vendors. He accepts e-payments, he's got all his banking information, he has branded fucking hats and jerseys, and he is a cyclist and he's involved with that community. This guy was unlike anything we had really ever seen before. So this is me, fall 2020, trying to figure out what to do. We had uncovered this absolute tsunami of information. We sort of put a picture together of this guy and his operation and kind of have, we have a lot. It was almost too much information to deal with. And at this point, I'm working with victims. I'm working with other anti-theft people in the cycling space. What do you do? What do we do? This is kind of the big question. Our constituents at Bike Index are the victims. Our constituents are people who've been robbed. So our idea was, okay, well, let's go looking for super slam dunk bikes. There's absolutely no question that this is the bike. We have a jurisdiction. Maybe it's an exceptional theft, or maybe it's really high dollar. Maybe we can get law enforcement interested. So we went looking for slam dunks. Slam dunks are, one black Trek bicycle, like a mountain bike, is going to look like another black Trek mountain bike. There's not a whole lot of distinction. Cyclists will also often do these customizations, though, which is where all these high-quality pictures come in handy, because you've got things like stickers, decals, components that are different. So we went looking for bikes that there would be absolutely no question. So this is one of the bikes that sort of was our first slam dunk example. And for those of you that are looking at the dollar amounts, those were in pesos, they were not in dollars. So he's not selling this for $53,000. That's 53,000 Mexican pesos. So those of you that do know bikes, let's take a look at this bike real quick. Has anybody ever heard of this brand? Like, I've never heard of this brand. I've been looking at bikes for like 20 years. Gorilla is a new name to me. There's also something written on the rear triangle that I can't quite entirely make out, so we're going to take a look at that. But like, kind of a weird looking bike, kind of a standout bike. I don't know what Justice Kojak's Kuju is, but that's written on the rear triangle, and there's a head badge with a logo that we can do some reverse image searching on. Again, I've never heard of this brand, and I've been doing bikes for 20 years. Kind of interesting branding, something easily searchable. There is a sticker that with a little Photoshop, we did some filter cleanup on, we sharpened it up, and it turned out to be, say, Ultimate Cycling Uganda. So the fun thing, if you Google Ultimate Cycling Uganda, Gorilla Bikes, and the words Justice Kojak's Kuju, you get a dude named Justice Kojak's Kuju, who is the co-founder of Gorilla Bikes and rides for Ultimate Cycling Uganda, who literally has that bike in his profile picture. So this is like the slammiest of slam dunks, right? And we talked to this guy. This bike was stolen out of Oakland. Custom bike, he made it with his own hands, literally has his name on the frame. It was a car smash and grab. He did all the confirmation for us and said, yes, this is absolutely my bike. But we're literally talking about a one-of-a-kind bicycle in the entire world that has it's the creator's bike and it has his name on it. So that is like one of our biggest wins. So we dug into that one for a while. That was one of our great slam dunks. So for the next 4 years, this is what I do. I wake up every morning, I look at this guy's ads, I try to analyze, I try to capture them first, just because he's doing this so frequently and with such rapidity, it's hard to even keep up with this dude. I'm taking that data and I'm capturing it in one, I'm doing screenshots and I'm saving some stuff to Excel. I'm processing it, I'm putting it in a place that I can share it with other anti-theft people, so I can sort of analyze how much is this guy making monthly, daily. We're looking for patterns, right? How frequently does he post? Are there times he's not posting? Are there times that he posts an unusual amount and then he's quiet for a while? We're sort of analyzing the pattern of life on this guy. And during that time, we're looking for more slam dunks. This is another one. It's visually unique, and in this particular instance, the theft victim had great footage of his theft. They caught this guy on like 4 Nest cams. So we have a very unique bike found with the seller, and there's tons of footage. So that's one that we would put into the Let's Go Talk to Cops About pile. Another one, this particular brand has their serial number in a really weird place. So in these high quality photos that this guy was posting, he just threw up the serial number, which is great because not only did that victim also have footage of his theft, he literally made a little website about it, and where he correlated all this stuff, and he's a dude in San Francisco, he's a code guy, so of course there's a website about his stolen bike. That was also a slam dunk in our opinion. Along the way, we're also finding, just he's not a subtle man. He's getting questions from people that this translates roughly to like, wow, how do you do it? Where did all this preciousness come from? He's talking about this new load of bikes that he just got, and he says, well, we have people getting robbed all over. Another person says, hey, I want to buy this bike. Is there an invoice? It's like, no, there's no invoice, my friend. So we're finding these little, like, in my mind, this is a criminal actor. I don't have any qualms about saying that. So to a certain point, I have some great stats. We captured gigs and gigs of information on this guy, tens of thousands of photos. We were able to study the economics of it because we saw what he was selling these bikes for, and when victims register with Bike Index, they would tell us, hey, this was a $10,000 bike, a $5,000 bike. So over the 3.5-ish, 4 odd years when I compiled these numbers, we watched this guy clock like $2.1 million in sales. We obviously don't know his overhead. We don't know how much of that is profit, how much of that was taken up with shipping, but like, that's the largest operator I've ever seen. We've seen people in the 5-digit, maybe occasionally nearing 6 digits. I've never seen anybody in the bike theft space clock millions of dollars. So here's me in spring 2021. We have a process now where I'm able to capture this guy's sales and do some analysis and talk to victims and talk to police. It's incredibly time consuming. We're getting brushed off from law enforcement left and right. The minute you call a law enforcement officer and say, this thing's in Mexico, you can just hear them leave the conversation as fast as humanly possible. We're trying multiple different avenues to try to get this guy banned. One of the first questions we had was, could we just nuke this guy from orbit? Can we just take out his market? Can we just get him kicked off Facebook and that'll hit him in the pocketbook? Like, I'm not going to fly down to Mexico and deal with this dude, but what if we just kill his ability to do sales? But along the way, we're getting these great OSINT wins, and it's like, oh, let's keep doing this. I'm learning here. That's fun. That's kind of interesting, and like it's it's a pandemic. I don't have a lot going on. Like, I'm looking for a project. So this next slide is my most favorite slide in the universe. Seriously, fuck Facebook in particular. If I know anybody here works for Facebook, I'm sorry. You find a better job, do better with your life. Bike Index's shtick has always been, no matter who we're talking to, be it law enforcement, be it a brand, be it somebody like Facebook, like a platform, we can always connect with another cyclist. We can always find the one guy who's a triathlete, or the one guy who's a mountain biker, or the one guy who's like, oh yeah, I ride. Like, that's kind of where our special sauce is. And we've always been able to connect, and sort of, that's how we get stuff done. We had a bunch of personal contacts through Facebook who we had maybe half dozen to a dozen odd conversations with them. They were all completely worthless, useless. Like, they all but admitted, like, look, we've created this beast and we can't stop it. There's nothing, I literally am a manager of XYZ, there's nothing I can do about this guy. And after about the 6th iteration of that conversation, it's like, you've created the monster and you can't control it. The best quote I'd ever had was this, we're hoping to solve this with artificial intelligence. It's like, dude, we're giving you actual intelligence by the gigabyte. I don't necessarily trust your abilities to solve anything with artificial intelligence. So after a couple of years, it was incredibly obvious that Facebook was a dead end. That was all wasted time. And I harbor a lot of resentment about that. Although, along the way, I'm having a lot of fun. There was one particular guy in this orbit. It's not the Bastardo, but it's another guy sort of in the same arena that we were looking at around the same time. And this guy had this amazing habit. It might be a little hard to see on the screen, but a lot of these guys are very great at self-promotion. As they're shipping a bike out, as they're sending a bike out, they're like, hey, look at all this hotness I'm sending. Look, these are another 4 going out today. My customers love me. This guy was so cagey. He would always Photoshop out anything. We were trying to zoom in, we were trying to capture addresses, we were trying to capture numbers. Even when this dude was posting stuff that was 45 feet away, he would do a little edit job, and it drove me absolutely insane. And one of the big things this investigation taught me about OSINT is it's not necessarily about your tooling, it's not about your computers, it's about your freaking persistence. Because eventually, that guy is going to screw up. And he's not even going to know he screwed up. Who can tell me what's wrong? Tell me the error that this gentleman made. It might be hard to see on the screen. If you're saying the enormous scannable QR code, that would be absolutely, yeah. And again, it's hard to see here, but there's also a tracking number on there. So this guy, I mean, he did this religiously. I looked at hundreds of photographs from this particular individual, and when you get something like this, it's like the Super Bowl. This is a pattern that would repeat itself. The great thing about scanning that QR code or that tracking number is it just drops you into this Mexican taxation system that says, "Hello, Luis. Here is your address. Here is your sending." Here, like it's completely wide open. And we would see that repeat itself again and again and again. There's all these small regional shipping companies in the Mexican sphere that. You can see this gentleman on the right took great pains to redact everything, but he left the tracking number wide open in the upper right. Again, you put that tracking number into the website and it's just the pinata just opens. You just get everything. We were also able to do shipping analysis. So what was really alarming about this particular dude was we would see a bike get stolen on Monday. We would see that bike advertised probably Tuesday or Wednesday. We're talking like a 12 to 24 hour turnaround time. So this particular bike was stolen January 7th, and it was posted in a physical location that we're 90% sure is in the United States on the 9th. And then later on, a couple weeks later, that same bike would appear in a location that we had sort of figured out was Mexico a couple weeks later. And you would see this pattern repeat itself. Theft, instant advertisement, small delay, it would pop up in Mexico. Theft, instant advertisement, small delay, pop up in Mexico. Again and again and again and again. The reason that's important is if you start sort of like throwing this into any platform and looking at it, you can tell when this guy's getting shipments. He will not have anything for a couple of weeks. He will have advertised a lot of things, and he'll not have anything, and then suddenly he'll have 16 things. And what you're seeing there are trucks. So he just had a new batch come in. He had a new delivery come in. And you sort of start to see this pattern of like, okay, you every third Tuesday, like that's your day. That's when your guy is coming. And that sort of analysis is like, it's boring, it's time consuming, it's painstaking, but you're sort of seeing the pattern around how this guy functions. Along that way, we're also doing, we're literally looking at thousands of photographs. We're seeing the same locations. We're seeing sort of similar characteristics in these locations. Like this, it's not like, it doesn't seem like you can pull a whole lot out of this particular set of photos, right? Looks kind of industrial. Looks like it's corrugated metal. Maybe there's some like concrete, but there's not a whole lot here to go on. You see some exterior shots. There's different paint. You're looking for things like vegetation. You're looking for that one picture where they shoot it and there's a car in the background. But we're just getting this in our brains like, hey, we see this bike in this location again and again and again and again. This is the stash spot. This is where all the criminals are taking the thing. When they steal the thing, that's where they go. How do we find this place? What did I say before? You look, and then one day you get lucky. You get one picture out of 1,000. That picture might not even be around, so let's get lucky. We got lucky. February 14th, this guy screwed up, and he posted a picture he should not have posted. It took me a minute to figure this out, but if you have a folder of photos on your iPhone and you name that folder, that's what is appearing on this picture on the left. And the name of that folder was Victoriano. And Victoriano, this picture was only up about 45 minutes. This guy realized what he had done, and he went back and removed that singular photo out of a batch of about 30 photos. But we had already captured it at that point. And I often wonder how life would have been different if I had just been like out for lunch that day and not caught this photo. Because from that name, we found a follower. From that follower, we found a business. And there was only a single follower that had any name that sort of matched that particular detail. So we started looking at that. We started looking at that specific business. So what are you going to do the first thing? Let's go aerial views, right? And what are we seeing? We're seeing an industrial setting. We're seeing corrugated metal. We're seeing some colors that kind of match. We're seeing like that green. This aerial imagery is not amazing, but it's enough to nudge us and say, yeah, you're getting kind of warm, right? Look a little harder, it's looking real promising. You're seeing pictures that were posted on this individual's Facebook page for promotional reasons, and what are we seeing? We're seeing the same sort of metal, we're seeing the same shading. Sure wish he would have posted some more, but at this point we're getting a little warmer. We're getting a little warmer, and it feels good to get a little warmer. Again, there's going to be one photo out of 1,000. So I looked at so many pictures that looked exactly like this for months. And then one day I see this. And it's a picture he took in an interior space. And again, it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see on the left that there's like a round cylindrical metal thing. What is it? It's a transmission in a transmission shop that has conveniently posted pictures of their orange racks in said transmission shop. So at this point, we're not warm anymore, we're flaming hot. And then you get even more lucky. Please stop, this is way too easy. we dig way back in this guy's archive, and what do we find? We find him having dinner with the Bastardo. The Bastardo is literally wearing one of his branded hats, basically putting them in the same place at the same time. They're affiliated. So if anybody here wants a great OPSEC tip, don't do crimes wearing your own branded hat and then post pictures of it. It just doesn't necessarily end well for you. So long story cut short. That all bore fruit. And I would love to talk more about this, but it's a very short talk. But those of you that want to go looking, you can find a release from the FBI entitled San Jose Man Charged in Alleged Conspiracy to Sell High-End Bicycles in the Bay Area for Resale in Mexico. It's a very long indictment. It's very interesting. They called it a, quote, complex international fencing operation that stole bicycles from homes in San Francisco during nighttime burglaries and then transported those bicycles to Jalisco, Mexico. This guy is currently being charged with 1 count of conspiracy to transport stolen goods, foreign commerce, yada, yada, yada. Both charges carry a maximum penalty of 25 years in prison. I was ready to talk about this in 2021. Because this took place, I basically did not for a long time, or I gave this talk in very redacted form. So this is all brand new. That's going to take a very long time to play out, as most things in the federal and prosecutorial world do. But hey, we got a little tiny bit of justice. Go us. But what's weird about it is there's one guy who's not named in that indictment, and that is Bastardo Grande, Ricardo Estrada Zamora of La Barca, Jalisco, Mexico. He is just simply referred to as the unindicted co-conspirator number 1. There is a great little extra tidbit in this indictment, though, that I was not immediately aware of, that when they raided this transmission shop, they also took $200K in cash. So we did score a tiny little bit of justice. It's worth reading indictments. There's often some really interesting things in there. But meanwhile, back at the Bastardo Ranch, business continues as normal, which is really quite shocking to me. Imagine being this guy, and imagine watching your co-conspirator's name pop up in FBI indictments and say, yeah, fuck it, I'm just going to keep selling bikes. And that's exactly what this guy did. We watched him switch his supply. Instead of sourcing bikes from the Bay Area, we saw this long streak from San Diego. And we did exactly the same routine, exactly the same exercise. Unfortunately, that one did not bear a ton of fruit, and we were not able to get San Diego PD sort of engaged on it. But fortunately, or unfortunately, that source dried up. So somewhere around middle 22-ish, 23-ish, my memory is a little fuzzy, the supply on this guy switched from California to Oregon, which is especially alarming to me because I live in Oregon. We were watching him source stuff from Bend, which is kind of further south in Oregon, and Hood River, which is far east, and shockingly, bikes from Portland, Oregon, which blew my mind at this point because, again, I live in Portland, Oregon. The bike on the right, it's a little hard to see on this display. That orange decal is a sticker of a bike shop that has a very unique sort of logo to it, and I recognized that immediately, and my head exploded because I realized he was sourcing closer to Portland. So now it's personal, right? Like, I am seeing bikes in this guy's stable, literally from shops that I have been to, shops where I have friends that work there, shops that I have used for a long time. This is another case where he posted a bike that contained a decal for that shop, realized what he has done, and then pulled it about 30, 45 minutes later with the decal off, but we were able to capture it. It's a Selwood Cycle sticker. At this point, we're all super frustrated, right? I've talked to hundreds of victims. I myself am really frustrated to watch this guy continue doing what he's doing. It's very painful. So at this point, when this whole thing started, we had a couple of contingencies. We're like, hey, maybe law enforcement will get into this. Maybe, yay, they'll tie up everything with a nice little bow. Maybe they won't. What do we do if they don't? And the secondary sort of contingency plan was let's just out this guy publicly. Let's just drop a bomb on him and ruin his market. Let's tank his ability to sell. So we've been working with a writer for all that 4 years who eventually got this published in Wired magazine. So last month, Wired.com, you can read this article entitled "The West Coast's Fanciest Stolen Bikes Are Getting Trafficked by One Mastermind in Jalisco, Mexico." And we felt okay with this because it became clear that the feds weren't ever going to touch this guy. They were never going to be able to do anything. So I have to thank this writer who sat on this story for 4 years with me. He had a lot of patience and he had a lot of persistence. We also, in conjunction with that Wired article, published in everything we'd ever collected on this guy. We wrote up area-specific articles. So if you had been robbed in Oregon, for example, you had been robbed in California, or you had been robbed in Colorado, we had posts that were basically customizing, saying, hey, if you're one of these victims, you can go to our archives, look at this particular era when he was sourcing from your area, your arena, and go find your bikes in the stable. And that's exactly what we did. So we have a public Google Doc. It's not fancy. It's not whiz bang. It's low. I call it low tech by high Schadenfreude. It gets the job done, and victims came out of the freaking woodwork. Right? We had so many more people that had never heard of Bike Index, would never use Bike Index, would never have heard of our platform or system. Say, that's my bike. Holy what? Like, and we just checked another one off the box and added another number to this guy's statistics. Crazily, we also had a bunch of people in Mexico who had bought from this guy. Had not, to them, he looks like a legitimate business. Facebook sort of puts this shiny veneer of e-commerce on him. He's got hats, he's got shirts, he's got but we had all these people in Mexico. This publication sort of went crazy on Mexican cycling Twitter and through WhatsApp groups, and it sort of went through like wildfire. We had all these people say, hey, look, I'm sorry, I live in Mexico City, I have your bike, do you want this back? And there were some people who were like, fuck yeah, I want my bike back, and let's work that out. And there were other people who were like, you know what, I took an insurance hit on it. Legally, it's not mine anymore. You're like a 16-year-old kid. Enjoy my bike, man. I'm glad you like it. Go shred on it. Have a good time with it. So we saw a lot of these interactions where it wasn't necessarily all doom and gloom, and we basically. We tried to tank the market as hard and as deeply as we could. Infuriatingly, guess what didn't happen? This guy's still on Facebook. He's still selling bikes. He listed bikes 2 days ago when I wrapped this article up. Facebook account is still active. His account is not banned. He's incredibly slower. I would say we tanked maybe 60-70% of his market. A lot of people realize what he was, and there's a word for it, falluquero, which is like black marketeer, like fence, basically, as you would say in English. And it just said, this guy is bad, don't buy from this guy. And some of the most heartwarming things that we saw a lot of chatter in these Facebook groups, specifically talking about this guy, saying, nobody buy from this guy. This is bullshit. Because I own a shop in Playa de whatever, we were robbed and our bikes are the community down there gets it. And it just takes sort of shining a light and showing people look, this is actually what's happening. Please don't utilize this particular seller. And, I can't exactly buy a cruise missile on eBay, so this is the only thing I was able to do. If anybody here has a cruise missile for sale, find me after the talk. So the big takeaways. This is the largest operator we've ever seen. Millions of dollars, tons of throughput, very advanced in the sort of self-promotion, cooperation. We did achieve a little bit of justice, but it's extremely clear that U.S. law enforcement they're not capable of handling somebody like this. If he was stealing AK-47s, this would be an entirely different conversation. But he's stealing bikes, right? And bikes are sort of considered it's like a consumer thing. It's not, they're a fun thing that people ride on the weekend. That's not necessarily, even if you get the millions of dollars, it's not necessarily something we're going to dig into super hard. The thing that this really taught me, this shout out goes to the dozens and dozens of victims who assisted me in this process, are not OSINT practitioners, but they are the single most motivated humans in the history of the universe because they want revenge. So it was a really interesting exercise in, they just call it Facebook stalking. They don't call it OSINT. They just call it like, I want my damn bike back. They don't call it investigative techniques, but they're doing OSINT. They're doing investigative techniques. And these people would pull out stuff that even I, who have read every book Michael Bazzell has ever written forward to backwards, these people would come up with stuff every day, and I'd be like, God damn, where'd you get that from? That's a good score. Like, or they would just be as persistent or more persistent than I was. Like, I have a day job. I can't watch this guy 24/7. But a victim in San Diego who wants blood, he absolutely will. Like, I couldn't get into this guy's Instagram, but somebody else did and gave me that password. So it really taught me, the closest distance between 2 points is a really pissed off theft victim. So if any of you engage in this kind of work, go to the victims, go to the source, go to the people that have been harmed by those actors. If you don't have enough bandwidth, resources, time, cash, money, they will surprise you to no end. So this shout out to them. A lot of them didn't want their names anywhere near this for the obvious reasons. I sort of became the public face of this, but there are dozens and dozens of victims who did a lot of crazy shit. That if this was a Sky Talk, I would tell you about it. You want to know about it, come find me afterwards. But they did some pretty amazing things, so shout out to them. Everybody can do this. And Facebook is littered with these kind of crimey dudes. I'm a bike guy. I'm only doing this for bikes. If you're into kayaks, if you name literally any consumer item that's worth more than $500 that exists in the world, I guarantee you there's 10 dudes like this out there doing it. And what this taught me is, whatever you're into, it's open season. Go crazy. Like, it's fertile hunting grounds. Go find those guys and make their lives difficult. You will find a lot of little communities based around, like, there's, in the biking world, for example, there's like Stolen Bikes Seattle, Stolen Bikes Denver, Stolen Bikes New Orleans. You'll find these little regional communities of these victims, and they do amazing work. So go do that if you're into this kind of work. It is an endless plethora of work out there. The other big takeaway, and I've been thinking about this really long and hard, we're literally surrounded by like $1 trillion industry that hunts incredibly bad threat actors, right? Like your crowd strikes, there are so many people out there working in intel and threats that are based around like, Russian guys that want to hack like airplanes and nuclear power plants, and that's great. We need that. That's amazing, right? Like God bless them. We don't want Russians in our nuclear power plants or our grid, but I don't hang out with a bunch of power plants or nuclear facilities. I hang out with a bunch of cyclists. And there are $0 spent on dudes like this. There are zero threat intel analysis of people that are more likely to actually be closer to and harming the communities and people that we actually care about. My parents use Facebook Marketplace all the time. My dad buys and sells stuff all the time. I don't want him interacting with sketchy dudes like this. I don't want all the victims to have their stuff be sold on platforms like this. And I've been really trying to figure out like what does this type of threat analysis and intelligence look like for people like you and me, people that aren't nuclear power plants or aviation industry, or like there's a lot of people out here like this that are looking to do harm or to profit off of our misery. Like, what do we do about them? It's obvious that the platforms are never going to do a damn thing. And for those of you that have already heard the enshittification talk by Cory Doctorow, I think part and parcel, part of enshittification are giant platforms that let really shitty operators just to continue on their platforms. And they'll say, we take X seriously, but in reality, they don't do a damn thing. So I've been really chewing on like an idea that, this is why I say I'll see you at DEFCON 33, where maybe I'll be talking about how do you collect, analyze, and distribute information on dudes like this to people like us in this room. So that's kind of the last big takeaway that I want to put in your heads out there. And if anybody has any further ideas, I'd love to hear it. So huge shout out to DEFCON, huge shout out to Recon Village. There's a bunch of people here from Portland, Oregon, the 503 Hacks fam. My wonderful partner is here who has suffered with me through so much of this. It's her first DEFCON. Everybody give her a hand. And again, there are so many people that assisted with this, victims, other people in the crime space, other people in certain industries, that they'll never be named, they didn't want to be named, so this shout out goes to them as well. I am Bike Index on Twitter. I also have a more threat intel Twitter feed called Abyss Domain Expert. I think I have some time for a couple of questions if anybody has questions, and thank you very much. It's been awesome. Damn, it's loud. So how are we going to do questions? What's your question? Come up here so I can hear you. And I'll repeat it for the recording. So.
Okay, so you talked about, it sounds like you have some kind of scraper just looking at all this guy's socials in real time. And,
So there was no scraper. This was not automated. This was human. This was done by hand.
F5.
This was, yeah, I wrote up a thing that was like, look, here's where we're putting the data. Here's how you take screenshots. Here's the Google Doc that we're using. Humans, victims, myself and victims. So yeah, I would have loved to have automated this. We did not automate this. This was all human, which is great because as people were doing it, that's when we were finding those wins. That's when somebody would say, "Holy crap, look at this logo," or "Look at this other thing," or like that's you have to have a human looking at that and analyzing it, and making it a manual process really helped with that. So time consuming as hell and painful, but yeah, we did not automate this. Also, if you do that on Facebook, technically you're violating terms of service. Yada yada. You know, everybody here in this room probably get around that, but we're keeping our hands clean. So, any other questions? Please, I got like 8 more minutes. Throw some at me. Come up here so I can hear you. What's that? I'm sorry, you're so quiet. What was the Kung Fu movie? It's from the Detective D series, which I think there's only 3 or 4 movies, but they're all fabulous. They're all fantastic. Highly recommended. Any other questions? All right,
What was the best bike reunification story?
Oh, damn. Best bike reunification story. Maybe not the most expensive bike. Maybe not the fanciest bike, but there was when they did finally raid this transmission shop. He had inventory, and after literally 4 years of telling people, "You're never getting this back. You're never getting this back. You're never getting this back," I got to call one dude, or the law enforcement reached out to me to get his number. I was like, "Let me do it." Like, we were able to tell one dude, like, "You are the luckiest son of a bitch in the world because you are the only guy out of literally hundreds of victims that we've talked to. You're getting yours back." And it was like a green. It wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't anything amazing. We talked to victims that had like 40 or 50K stolen in one pop. I highly recommend everybody, if you want to know more about this, there's so much in here I didn't get to talk about because of time, but that Wired article is fantastic. He was getting stuff out of commercial burglaries. So there was a shop in California that had been burgled that had one of they call them hang tags. It's like a little piece of paper that has the shop logo and it says like $99.95. You know, it's got the price on it. This guy literally posted bikes that had those hang tags still on it. So it's like a bike in Jalisco, Mexico that has a hang tag from a store in California with like the codes and everything on it. And the first thing you get when you Google that store is like, $800,000 worth of bikes taken in this commercial burglary that happened on this particular day. So he was getting stuff from not only regular sort of like residential victims, he was getting commercial stuff. There was a series of armed bike jackings in Oakland where guys were literally driving around, popping out with guns and saying, "Get off the bike." One of those bikes popped up in this crop. Basically, individual in San Jose was buying from anybody that had that thing. And it became known, like if you're robbing, if you find jewelry, you go to one guy. If you have guns, you go to another guy. If you find bikes, you go to this guy. And so we were seeing that's what stymied us for so long, because when we started this, we didn't know, like, is this guy like the best cat burglar in the universe? Like, is he literally robbing all these people? And then the picture became more clear. No. He's the last chain in a very long chain. There's guys in the front that are doing the robberies, the burglaries. There's a guy in the middle doing purchasing and packaging and transport. And the guy that we're looking at, he's the guy at the end. So that was a very long answer to a very short question, but thank you. So what's your question?
I found an API for the web page.
Which one?
Bike registration.
For Bike Index? Yeah, Bike Index has an open API. If anybody wants to play with bike stuff, come check out bikeindex.org. We'd love to have your help. The API, for example, is how we integrated with point-of-sale systems. So there's like a couple web-based point-of-sale systems that are really cheap that a lot of bike shops use, and we just plug that into our API. So as they're like literally swiping your credit card to sell you the bike, they just go boop, and that bike goes in Bike Index. There's all kinds of projects we'd love people to hack on if you want to hack on a little bit. We could use some help. We're a nonprofit. We make no money. It's a high karma, $0 industry. But if you've ever had anything stolen from you, you probably get where we're coming from. So I think I'll take one more question because we're running up towards the end here. Anybody got one more question? Okay, what's your question?
How long was their operation? Like, how early did
So the question was, how long was this operation? The farthest back we found this guy doing this sort of thing was 2015. So that price, that $2.1 million was like the 3.5 years we were looking at him, but he'd been operating since 2015. So you can kind of do the math. Like he was making a decent amount. He was slower at the start. We sort of hit him when he was in his stride, when he was probably at his highest and best. But we found really, really, really old ads, exactly same methodology, same idea, same place in 2015. So, all right, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, DEFCON. Thank you, Recon Village. Thanks for listening to me rant about bikes for 45 minutes. Go have a good DEF CON.